Some men build empires to forget the people they once loved. Others build them to be seen by the one who got away. The billionaire invited his former lover to his wedding, intending to bask in her discomfort amid the extravagance and elite luxury. But everything shifted when she arrived, with a boy who looked exactly like him. His smug confidence gave way to confusion. Who was this child? The emotional twist that followed would leave him shaken. The golden autumn light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive suite. On the 42nd floor of the Wilshire Grand Tower in Los Angeles, 39-year-old Adrian Calloway stood, gazing over the buzzing city below, casually rotating a Cartier pen between his fingers. In the reflection of the glass, a sharply dressed man stared back, perfectly styled black hair and a Brioni suit that rivaled the price of a high-end sports car. "Mr. Calloway, Miss Winslow is online too," his assistant announced via intercom. "Thank you, Lydia," he responded, pressing the button before answering the call. "Savannah, darling." "Adrian, you won't believe this?" Savannah's voice sparkled with excitement. "I just met with the decorator, and he had the most breathtaking concept for the entryway. Picture this: a wall of cascading white peonies, each one lit individually. It's perfect for our midnight garden theme." Adrian smiled faintly, already picturing the cost. "Sounds magnificent, Savannah. I trust your taste." "Oh, and about the guest list." She hesitated. "We need to lock it in today. The designer starts on the custom invitations tomorrow." Adrian's smile faded slightly. This was the moment. "Actually, I want to add one more name." "One more? I thought we were already over 500 guests." "It's someone from my past, Elise Hartman." The silence on the other end thickened. Savannah Winslow, heiress to the Winslow media empire, was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. She'd been taught from childhood to recognize the subtext behind every sentence. "Elise Hartman," she repeated evenly. "Your ex from Stanford?" Her voice was calm, but Adrian recognized the shift in tone. "Yes, I think it's appropriate." "Appropriate?" Savannah let out a dry chuckle. "Adrian, nothing about inviting an ex-girlfriend to our wedding is appropriate, unless—" She let the word hang. Adrian turned back to the cityscape. The traffic below was a blur, unaware of the storm brewing 42 stories above. "She works at the LA Times now. It would be great publicity." "Please don't insult me," Savannah snapped. "You've never cared about press before." "What's the real reason?" Adrian closed his eyes, the memory of her name in a recent article flashing in his mind. 15 years had passed since he left for Hong Kong, choosing career over love. 15 years building his empire, collecting power and prestige, and now preparing to marry one of the most envied women in California. "I want her to see what I've become," he admitted softly. "Now it would be great publicity for us." "Please don't insult me," Savannah snapped. "You've never cared about publicity before. What's really going on?" Adrian closed his eyes, the image of Elise's byline from a recent editorial flashing in his mind. The moment he saw her name, it felt like a sucker punch straight to the chest. It had been 15 years since he chose to leave for Hong Kong. 15 years of building his company, commanding respect, and earning power. Now he was on the verge of marrying one of California's most admired women. "I want her to see," he finally admitted, his voice softer. "I want her to see where I've ended up." Savannah didn't speak at first. This silence, however, was different, tinged not with anger but with understanding. "You still think about her?" "It's not that," Adrian replied quickly, maybe too quickly. "It's about validation, proving to myself that I made the right choice." "Fine," Savannah sighed. "Add her to the list. But Adrian, if this is really about validation, maybe we should consider postponing the wedding." "Savannah, don't be ridiculous. It's just an invitation. If you say so." Her tone was distant now. "I've got to go. I have a tasting with the chef in 5. The call ended, leaving Adrian alone in the silence of his office. He returned to his polished mahogany desk, pulling open the bottom drawer, one he rarely touched. Beneath contract folders and legal files was a single worn envelope. Inside it, an old photograph. Him and Elise, their last summer together, laughing, wrapped in each other's arms outside a Stanford dorm. So young, so in love, so sure the world couldn't touch them. The door creaked as Lydia entered with a stack of contracts. "Mr. Calloway, the board is ready in the conference room." Also, Mrs. Preston from the event agency called again about the menu tasting. Lydia, Adrian said, still looking at the photo. I need you to track down an address for someone. Elise Hartman. She's a journalist at the LA Times. Of course, sir. Anything else? Yes. When you find her address, send one of the premium invitations, the Swarovski box. Lydia nodded and left. Adrian grabbed his phone, opened the browser, and typed in Elise Hartman, Los Angeles Times. Her recent articles filled the screen. The voice in the writing was unmistakable, sharp, insightful, unchanged. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Calloway, I found Miss Hartman's address. She lives in Pasadena, close to Stanford, actually. Adrian's heart thudded a bit faster. Great, send the invitation today. One more thing, he paused. Yes, sir? Lydia's voice was cautious. While you were researching, did anything else come up? I noticed she has a child. Should I include a +1 on the invitation? The question hung in the air for a beat too long. A child? Yes, sir. A boy. He appears in some of the photos from charity events and press releases, Lydia said cautiously. Adrian loosened his collar, the fabric suddenly feeling tighter than before. Yes, include the +1. And Lydia, find out more about the child. That evening, as he steered his deep blue Aston Martin DB11 through the winding streets of Bel Air toward his penthouse, Adrian couldn't stop thinking about Elise and her son. 15 years was enough time to build an entirely new life. Maybe she'd married someone, a professor perhaps, or another journalist. A life he once dismissed as small, limited, beneath the dreams he chased across continents. His phone rang. Savannah again. We still need to talk about Elise, she said without preamble. I thought we'd already settled that, Adrian replied, easing the car to a stop in front of a red light. The city glowed around him. You're about to marry me, Adrian. If there's more to this story, something I should know, now's the time. He parked outside the building, eyes fixed on the shimmering skyline. You're overthinking this. It was 15 years ago. She probably won't even show up. And even if she does... He stopped short. The unspoken thought hung in the silence, heavier than anything either of them dared finish. The invitation has already been sent, he added finally. Let's just focus on the rest of the plans. Don't we have dinner with your parents Saturday? Savannah exhaled. Yes, 7 o'clock at Lever. Don't be late. As Adrian stepped out of the elevator into his penthouse suite, the weight of it all settled on his shoulders. His life had become a blueprint of control. Every move deliberate, every step calculated. Marrying Savannah wasn't just love. It was strategy. She brought elegance, influence, connections money couldn't buy. She was the final piece on his meticulously constructed social chessboard. So why did inviting Elise feel like someone had flipped the whole board? At the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills, final preparations for what tabloids dubbed the wedding of the year were underway. Just as Savannah envisioned, white peonies cascaded from the ceiling, glowing softly under golden uplights, giving the grand ballroom the enchanted atmosphere she had dreamed of. Adrian stood in the presidential suite, adjusting his silk tie before the mirror. Behind him, staff moved in coordinated rhythm, placing crystal, linens, and florals with choreographed precision. A soft knock. Mr. Calloway? Lydia entered with a digital tablet in hand. The final guest confirmations are in. Adrian turned, expecting nothing. Elise Hartman confirmed attendance, with a guest. His fingers paused on his tie. The mirror caught the slight tremor in his hand. Anything else? Lydia hesitated, clutching the tablet a little tighter. About the child. Her son, Miles. He's 8 years old. Adrian froze, the name echoing in his mind. 8. He had returned to California once, 7 years ago, a quick board meeting, one night at the Ritz in downtown Palo Alto. Lydia, I need you to. The door opened again. Savannah stepped in, radiant in a silk robe, eyes sharp. Can we talk alone? Lydia gave a discreet nod and exited, placing the tablet on the side table. Savannah waited for the door to click shut before she spoke. I saw the confirmation list. She confirmed? Savannah asked, her tone steady but eyes unblinking. Elise Hartman is actually coming? Savannah, let's not do this right now. No, Adrian, we are going to do this. She stepped closer, her piercing hazel eyes locking onto his. Because I found something out about your ex, something you should have told me. Adrian's chest tightened. What are you talking about? 8 years ago. That trip back to California for the board meeting, she said, arms folding tightly. You saw her then, didn't you? The memory slammed into him. That bar at the Four Seasons in Palo Alto. Elise sitting at the end of the counter, half-shadowed in golden light. The moment their eyes met, the hours they spent catching up, laughing, drinking wine, and then just one night. "It was one night," he said quietly. "And after that?" Savannah pressed. "You never spoke again?" "No." The word came out low, heavy. "I left the next morning. We had that Hong Kong merger." Savannah let out a bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. You really don't know, do you?" Before he could ask what she meant, noise erupted from the hallway. Raised voices. A sudden scuffle. "Ma'am, you can't go in there." Lydia's voice pleaded from outside. The suite door swung open. There she stood, Elise Hartman, older now, more poised, but with the same fire in her eyes that once captured him. And next to her, Adrian's breath hitched. The boy standing beside her was his reflection at 8 years old. Same eyes, same sharp jawline, even the same nervous furrow between his brows. "Elise," Adrian whispered. "Hello, Adrian," she said calmly, her voice steady against the thick tension. "I think it's time you met your son." Savannah let out a cold, almost amused breath. "Well, that explains a lot." She turned sharply to Adrian. "Did you know?" "No," he breathed, eyes never leaving the boy. "I didn't." "I tried to tell you," Elise cut in, her tone sharper now. "After that night, I sent messages, left voicemails at your office, but you were too busy, weren't you? Too caught up in that big London deal." The boy looked between them, uncomfortable, unsure. "Mom?" "It's okay, sweetheart," Elise said softly, resting her hand on his shoulder. "Remember what we talked about in the car?" The boy nodded, then looked up at Adrian, eyes searching. Voice small. "Are you my dad?" The question landed like a gut punch. Adrian staggered under the weight of it, memories of his own lonely childhood hitting him. Father's Day events with an empty seat, school games without a cheer, birthdays filled with silence. He swallowed hard. "Yes," he said quietly, "I am." "Cool," Miles said casually, giving a shrug, but Adrian noticed how tightly the boy clung to Elise's hand. "Do you have a PlayStation?" The light moment was shattered by the sound of a choked sob. Savannah stood motionless against the far wall, mascara streaking her cheeks as silent tears cut through her perfectly composed exterior. "Savannah?" Adrian began, stepping toward her. "No," she said sharply, raising a hand. "Don't." She turned to Lydia, who still stood frozen by the door. "Cancel everything, now." "Miss Winslow, there are 500 guests downstairs." "I said cancel it." Savannah snapped, then took a breath, trying to pull herself back together. "And call my parents. Tell them it's a family emergency." Elise stepped forward cautiously. "Savannah, I'm sorry. I never intended." "No," Savannah cut her off. "Don't apologize. You're just doing what you should have done 8 years ago." She turned back to Adrian, her gaze hard as stone. "And you, I hope it was worth it, keeping your secrets." Then she walked out of the suite, leaving only silence in her wake. Adrian pulled at his tie, the room suddenly too small, the air too thin. "Miles," Elise said gently, "why don't you go with Lydia to the cafe downstairs? I heard they have the best milkshakes in LA." The boy hesitated. "But we just met." "I know, sweetheart," she said with a reassuring smile. "But I need to talk to your dad, just for a few minutes, okay?" Lydia stepped forward and held out her hand. After one last look at Adrian, Miles took it and followed her out of the room. As the door clicked shut, Elise turned back to Adrian. "I didn't come here to destroy your wedding." "Then why did you?" "Because Miles started asking questions. Questions I couldn't answer by myself anymore." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a photo. Adrian recognized it instantly, the same one he had kept hidden in his drawer all these years. The two of them, young and carefree, wrapped in each other's arms outside the Stanford Library. "He's brilliant," Elise said softly. "Just like you were. He's obsessed with how things work, science, machines, logic puzzles. When he found this photo last month, he started asking, reading, searching. He came across old articles, interviews." She paused. "He's the one who wanted to come to the wedding." "Why didn't you tell me? Before?" "Before?" Her voice wavered, emotion pushing through the calm. "When you left for Hong Kong without saying goodbye? Or after that night in Palo Alto, when you ghosted every message I sent?" Adrian dropped into the nearest armchair, the weight of everything settling across his shoulders. "I was building something huge. I couldn't afford distractions." Elise gave a short laugh, cold and bitter. "Distractions? Is that how you see family?" Elise asked, her voice quiet but firm. "A distraction? No, Adrian rubbed his hands down his face, tension pressing against every nerve. I don't know what I think anymore. When I saw you both walk through that door, it was like my whole world turned upside down. Welcome to mine, for the last 8 years. She sat across from him now, her tone gentler. Miles is an amazing kid, Adrian. He deserves to know his father, even if that father once chose ambition over love. Her words struck deep. What do you want from me, Elise? Me? Nothing. But Miles? He deserves a chance to know you, if you want that, if you're ready to be something more than a CEO with a penthouse in Bel Air. A long silence followed, broken only by muffled voices outside the suite, guests being told of the wedding's cancellation. Adrian could already hear it. The disbelief, the gossip, the inevitable headlines. What's he like? The question slipped from his lips before he could catch it. A soft smile tugged at Elise's mouth. He loves astronomy, has a telescope in his room, knows the constellations by name. He plays Little League pitcher, just like you were. Adrian's eyes softened. He hates broccoli, but devours pepperoni pizza. He's terrified of thunder, but pretends not to be. She paused. And he asks about you. He's always asked. Something cracked inside Adrian then. Maybe his ego, maybe the facade he'd carried all these years. I want to meet him, he said finally. Really meet him. Not just whatever this was today. Are you sure? Elise asked. Because this isn't something you can disappear from when the next big deal pulls you away. I'm sure, and for the first time in years, he meant it. At that moment, the suite door swung open again. Miles stepped in, gripping a half-finished chocolate milkshake. His face lit up. Mom, did you know they have a huge chocolate fountain in the kitchen? Really? Elise laughed. Yeah. And Lydia said we can eat as much chocolate as we want because... He trailed off, glancing at Adrian. Because the wedding's canceled, Adrian said gently. Miles, he continued, stepping forward. Would it be okay if we talked for a bit? The boy looked to Elise, who gave a soft nod. About what? Well? Adrian smiled. How about you tell me about that telescope of yours? Miles brightened immediately. It's a Celestron Nexstar 8 SE. I can see Saturn's rings, and last week I spotted Jupiter's moons. As the boy animatedly described galaxies and planets, Adrian listened. Truly listened. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he smiled. Not the polished, curated grin of a media mogul, but something real. Something human. Far below, the grand ballroom of the peninsula buzzed with whispers and disorder. But up here, in this quiet moment, something entirely new was beginning. Downstairs, 500 members of California's social and corporate elite whispered behind designer clutches and cufflinks as staff quietly began dismantling the extravagantly crafted floral displays. The white peonies still cascaded elegantly from the ballroom's ceiling, glowing softly like silent witnesses to the chaos. On the mezzanine, overlooking the unfolding scene, Charles Winslow, Savannah's father and chairman of the Winslow Media Group, paced furiously with his phone pressed tightly to his ear. I don't care what you have to do, he barked. Control this narrative. We can't afford scandal. His wife, Victoria, intercepted a passing server and took 2 flutes of champagne. Her emerald green eyes, nearly identical to Savannah's, swept over the room like a seasoned general assessing damage on a battlefield. Meanwhile, inside the presidential suite-turned-command center, Adrian stood at a crossroads that would redefine not only his future, but that of everyone around him. Miles lay curled on one of the velvet couches, finally asleep, his young face peaceful after the whirlwind day. Elise sat nearby, fingers gently brushing through her son's hair, watching him with a quiet protectiveness. Mr. Calloway. Lydia entered gently, her voice soft. The Winslow family lawyers are here. They insist on reviewing the prenuptial agreement and any potential legal implications. Adrian looked at the sleeping boy, then at Elise. Something shifted inside him. Something realigned. Lydia, he said firmly, call Bernard. Your personal attorney? Yes, and start drafting a press statement. I'm making an announcement. Elise looked up, startled. Adrian, you don't have to. I do, he said quietly. For the first time in a long time, I really do. Bernard arrived 15 minutes later. His sharp 3-piece Italian suit did little to mask the growing concern on his face. Adrian, what in God's name is happening? He asked. I've missed 3 calls from Charles Winslow. The media's already circling. He stopped mid-sentence as his eyes landed on Elise and the sleeping boy. Understanding dawned instantly. Bernard, Adrian began calmly, voice lowered so as not to disturb Miles. I need a few things prepared. First, I want to formally recognize Miles as my son. Second, set up a trust fund in his name. And third, he took a long breath. I want to resign, effective immediately, as CEO of Callaway Holdings. What? Elise and Bernard exclaimed in unison. Adrian, Bernard protested, regaining composure. You built this company from nothing. This is your legacy. No. Adrian shook his head slowly, eyes back on Miles. He's my legacy. He looked away, voice thick with truth. The company, it was always about proving something. Proving I could be more than the man who abandoned me, that I could outshine his memory with money and power. But now... He smiled, quietly broken. Now I see I was becoming just like him. Elise stood slowly, stepping closer. You don't have to give everything up, Elise said softly. I'm not giving anything up, Adrian replied. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing. I'm really choosing what matters. A sudden noise in the hallway broke the moment. The door opened, and there was Savannah, still in her silk robe, but her perfectly styled hair now undone, eyes swollen and red. So that's it? Her voice trembled. 15 years of building something together, and you're throwing it away for a child you didn't even know existed until today. Adrian stepped toward her, gently reaching for her hands. Savannah, we didn't build something together. We built beside each other. You with your dynasty, me with mine. It looked perfect on paper, but it was never love. Her hands jerked away. How dare you? I loved you. You loved the idea of me, Adrian said, his voice calm but steady. The CEO. The self-made success story. The man who belonged in your world. But when was the last time we talked about anything real? About life? About dreams? About us? Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. Don't do this, she pleaded. Think about the headlines, the shareholders, the empire we created. I am thinking about what to build, he said gently. Something real, something lasting, for the first time in life. A soft rustle from the couch drew everyone's eyes. Miles stirred, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Mom? I'm here, baby, Elise said, rushing to his side. Savannah looked at the boy, then at Adrian, and finally at Elise. Her entire body seemed to slacken, the fire in her shoulders dimming. When she spoke again, her voice was different. You know, she said to Elise, I always felt it, that he was holding on to something, a piece of the past, a ghost. I thought if I gave him enough time, enough power, I could make him forget. She gave a bitter laugh. What a fool I was. Savannah, Elise began. No, I don't want your pity, or your sympathy. She turned to Adrian. Make your announcement. Claim your son. Step down from your throne. But remember this. When the headlines fade and the novelty wears off, remember what you gave up. She turned and walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of jasmine and a silence that hung heavy in the room. Miles blinked, sitting up. Is everything okay? Adrian knelt down in front of him, eye level. It will be, I promise. Bernard cleared his throat, stepping forward. Adrian, if you're serious about all this, I am, Adrian said, meeting his lawyer's eyes with complete clarity. Let's get to work. We need to move quickly, Bernard urged. The press is already speculating, and the market's open in a few hours. Right, Adrian said, rising to his feet. Get everything ready. I'll make the announcement in... He checked his watch. 30 minutes. Are you sure? Elise asked softly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next half hour passed in a blur of focused urgency. Lydia oversaw the conversion of the grand ballroom into a makeshift press room. Bernard finalized a preliminary statement. Public relations staff hustled about, phones glued to their ears, issuing controlled leaks to prevent wild speculation. On a quiet sofa off to the side, Miles sat between Elise and Adrian, absorbed in his phone. Can I play Minecraft while you talk to the people? He asked without looking up. Adrian chuckled. Of course. But after, how about we go get ice cream? I know a great place near Stanford. Miles's face lit up. Can we stop by the lab too? My professor has this amazing robot arm that can solve a Rubik's Cube. Adrian raised an eyebrow at Elise. Dr. Martinez, she explained. He's in Stanford's robotics department. Miles is part of a mentorship program. Turns out having a high IQ comes with some early perks. Adrian felt his chest swell. Pride, deep and raw. His son, already involved with cutting-edge robotics. It was more than he'd ever dreamed. Mr. Callaway, Lydia said gently, stepping forward. They're ready. Adrian rose, adjusted his jacket, Elise reached out and briefly squeezed his hand. "Good luck." He returned the gesture with quiet warmth and approached the temporary podium. The spotlight from the cameras hit him with full force. For the first time in his corporate life, Adrian Calloway felt his palms sweat. "Good evening," he began, voice measured but steady. "Today was meant to be my wedding day. Instead, it's become something much more meaningful. Today, I discovered the true meaning of family and responsibility." His eyes drifted to where Elise and Miles sat. "Today I met my son, a brilliant, curious boy who spent the past 8 years without a father, not by his mother's choice, but because I was too consumed by ambition and ego." Cameras clicked, reporters murmured. In the front row, Charles and Victoria Winslow sat stone-faced. Savannah was nowhere to be seen. "For years, I measured success by numbers, bank accounts, mergers, glass towers. But today, looking into my son's eyes, I saw what I had missed, what truly matters." He paused, took a sip of water. His hands trembled faintly. His voice did not. "Which is why I'm here to make 3 announcements. First, I am officially and publicly acknowledging Miles Hartman as my son, born from my relationship with Elise Hartman. Second, I am establishing a trust fund in his name, not as a way to repay lost time, but as an investment in his future. And third, I am resigning as CEO of Calloway Holdings." The room erupted, shouts, gasps, the flash of cameras in rapid succession. Dozens of reporters lunged forward, microphones in hand, bombarding him with questions. "Mr. Calloway, what does this mean for the company's valuation?" "Mr. Calloway, has the Winslow family issued a response? Is this connected to the pending merger with European Ventures?" Adrian raised his hands, motioning for silence. "I'll answer a few questions," he said, "but first, I have one last thing to say." He turned to face the cameras directly. "To Savannah Winslow," his voice was measured, steady, "I'm sorry. You deserved more than a man who couldn't give you his whole heart. To my shareholders, the company is stable and remains in capable hands under the direction of our current board. And to my son," his voice cracked slightly, emotion flickering beneath the surface, "I'm sorry for all the baseball games I missed, for the stargazing sessions that never happened, for the countless moments I should have been there, but wasn't." He took a breath. "But I promise, from this moment forward, I'll be there. Every moment I can." At the back of the room, Bernard watched with a complex mix of pride and unease. Beside him, Lydia's fingers flew across her tablet, no doubt scrambling to keep up with the flood of media alerts and internal messages already pouring in. "Mr. Calloway," one reporter finally broke through the chaos, "how do you plan to balance your remaining corporate ties with your personal responsibilities?" "My resignation as CEO is the first step," Adrian answered. "Over the next few months, I'll be transitioning out of daily operations completely. I'll retain an advisory seat on the board, but my focus now is on my son, on rebuilding something I never should have lost." He glanced toward Elise, and in her eyes, for the first time in years, he saw a flicker of something familiar. Recognition. Connection. "Mr. Calloway," another journalist called out, "there are rumors the Winslow family is considering legal action for breach of contract and reputational damage. Any response?" Before Adrian could reply, Charles Winslow rose from his seat and walked toward the podium. The ballroom fell quiet. Every camera swiveled toward the scene. Charles stopped just a few feet from Adrian. The 2 men stood eye to eye. "My daughter," Charles began, his voice calm but cold, "was prepared to marry you. Our families were poised to merge, not just in name, but in legacy." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "But now," another pause, "now I see we're better off. Having discovered your true nature before it was too late," Charles Winslow said coldly. Adrian straightened, eyes locked with the elder businessman. "Mr. Winslow," he said calmly, "I respect your family, and above all, your daughter. That's exactly why I couldn't go through with something that wasn't real." Charles let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Real? You speak of truth, after hiding a child for 8 years?" "I didn't hide him," Adrian answered, steady. "I didn't know, but now that I do, I'm doing what any real man would do. I'm stepping up." A flicker of something deeper crossed Adrian's expression. Behind the resolve was a storm, one not born from this confrontation, but from a much older wound. A vision flashed across his mind. A little boy, maybe 6, sitting alone in the bleachers after a t-ball game, glancing every few seconds toward the parking lot that remained heartbreakingly empty. That boy had waited, convinced that if he played hard enough, won often enough, maybe his father would show up. Just once, but he never did. That boy was him. And though he had vowed never to become that man, Adrian now realized he had in his own way. Not through neglect, but through absence. His jaw tightened as the memory passed. Stepping up wasn't just about Miles. It was about healing that boy inside him too, proving finally that he was nothing like the man who'd left. At the back of the room, Miles fidgeted in his seat. Elise leaned over, whispered something gently in his ear, and the boy nodded, relaxing slightly. Charles looked from Elise to the boy, then back at Adrian. "You've just thrown away an empire." "No," Adrian replied with a quiet smile. "I've just gained a family." The murmurs began again, louder, more chaotic. Bernard quickly approached the microphone. "There will be no further questions today," he announced. Security began ushering reporters toward the exits. Adrian made his way back to where Elise and Miles waited. "Still up for that ice cream?" he asked. Miles grinned, a grin that mirrored Adrian's almost perfectly. "Can we go see the robots afterward?" "Only if your mom says it's okay," Adrian replied, glancing at Elise. She smiled, eyes glistening. "I think we all deserve some ice cream after today." They exited through a side entrance, dodging the lingering media. As they slipped into the waiting car, Adrian's phone buzzed endlessly. Messages from investors, board members, news agencies. For the first time in his adult life, he powered the phone off. "You know," Miles said as they pulled away from the peninsula, "my friends at school are never going to believe this." Adrian laughed, a real laugh. "Let's get to know each other first. Fame can wait." Elise chuckled beside him. "He's right. You two have a lot of catching up to do." As the car turned the corner, leaving behind the buzz of reporters and a ballroom full of now wilted white peonies, Adrian realized he hadn't just made a life-altering decision. He'd finally started living. The first rays of morning sun filtered through the windows of Adrian's modest temporary home in Palo Alto. Since stepping down as CEO, he had left behind the sprawling Beverly Hills penthouse to move closer to Stanford and to Miles. The walls of Adrian's modest Palo Alto apartment, once decorated with abstract artwork and sleek minimalist pieces, were now lined with colorful drawings of planets, robots, and stars. Gifts from his son. "Mr. Calloway," Lydia's voice came through the intercom. "Miles is here for breakfast." Even after Adrian's resignation, Lydia had chosen to stay with him, now helping him navigate a very different kind of schedule. Adrian smiled and set aside the stack of educational research he'd been reviewing. Over the past few weeks, he and Miles had settled into a rhythm, breakfast together every Wednesday and Friday before school. It wasn't much, but it mattered. "Dad." Miles burst through the office door, his Stanford robotics backpack slung over one shoulder. "You won't believe what happened in the lab yesterday." "Good morning to you too, son." Adrian laughed, pulling him in for a hug. "Where's your mom?" "Here." Elise stepped into the room, a folder tucked under her arm. "Miles, show your dad what you brought." With eyes shining, Miles reached into his backpack and carefully pulled out a compact robot model. "It's a prototype for a Mars explorer. Dr. Martinez helped with the coding, but I designed it myself." Adrian inspected the model with growing admiration. It was impressively detailed, equipped with motion sensors, a tiny solar panel, and surprisingly thoughtful engineering. "This is incredible," he said, voice full of pride. "Have you considered optimizing the solar efficiency?" Actually, Miles launched into a detailed explanation, but Elise interrupted gently. "After breakfast, honey, you need fuel before school." The three of them headed to the kitchen, where Lydia had already laid out fresh fruit, toast, eggs, and waffles, a stark contrast to Adrian's once lonely corporate mornings. "How's your piece on education reform?" Adrian asked Elise, pouring juice for Miles. "Almost done," she replied, reaching for the butter. "But that's not the only reason we're here. We need to talk about Miles's birthday." Adrian paused. His son's 9th birthday was just 2 weeks away. He'd been thinking about it for days, determined to make it unforgettable. "I know," Miles said between bites of waffle. "We could do it at the planetarium. Dr. Martinez said he could give a special tour." "That's a fantastic idea," Elise said, smiling. "What do you think?" "I think it's perfect," Adrian agreed, already thinking of how to make it even more spectacular. "Actually, I've got a surprise that might go along with that." Miles's eyes widened. "What surprise?" If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? Adrian winked. But I think you'll love it. After breakfast, as Miles brushed his teeth, Elise lingered in the kitchen. She turned to Adrian, her tone more personal. You're doing well, she said quietly. Miles talks about you all the time. Adrian's chest tightened in the best way. Really? Yes. Just last night, he asked if he could spend the night here soon. Sometimes Adrian felt a lump rise in his throat. What did you say? I think it's time, Elise smiled gently. But let's start slow. Maybe after Miles's birthday party. Elise, he began, hesitating as he searched for the right words. I know I'm still learning how to be a father. I've made more mistakes than I can count, but I want to be part of his life. Really part of it. Not just for breakfasts and alternating weekends. She studied him quietly for a moment. Is that why you moved to Palo Alto? Partly, he admitted. Then his gaze met hers. The other part was to be closer to you. The silence that followed felt delicate, suspended like a soap bubble. Ready, Miles called, bounding back into the kitchen. Can we go now? Of course, sweetheart, Elise replied, breaking eye contact with Adrian. Your dad's coming with us to school today, remember? Really? Miles asked, eyes bright. Always, Adrian said, grabbing his car keys. During the drive, Miles talked non-stop about his Mars robot, his upcoming baseball tryouts, and the planetarium party. Adrian watched him through the rearview mirror, marveling at how curious, thoughtful, and animated his son was. And after the party, Miles continued, can we look at Jupiter's moons again with my telescope? Absolutely, Adrian replied. In fact, he glanced at Elise, who offered a subtle nod. How about we go camping this weekend? I know a great spot for stargazing. Miles's eyes lit up. Really? Can we bring the telescope and all the astronomy gear? Of course. Mom, will you come too? He asked hopefully. Elise hesitated. I don't know, sweetheart. I've got that article deadline. Please, Miles pleaded. It'll be more fun if we all go together. Adrian kept his eyes on the road, though his pulse quickened at the idea of a weekend getaway, just the three of them, far from everything and everyone. All right. Elise finally relented, but only if you promise to finish all your homework first. I promise, Miles cheered. When they arrived at school, Miles hugged them both tightly before running off to join his friends. Adrian and Elise stood silently, watching him disappear through the entrance. He looks happy, Adrian said. He is, Elise confirmed. Happier than I've seen him in a long time. She turned to him. And you? I'm happy too, she said softly. Happy that Miles finally has the father he always wanted. Happy to see you really trying. Adrian swallowed, his voice low. And what about us? The question hung in the air, light and tentative. Elise, I'm not asking for anything, he added quickly. I just want you to know, Adrian said quietly, that night 8 years ago, it wasn't just another night for me. It wasn't for me either, Elise admitted softly. But a lot has happened since then. I know, and I know I have to prove I've changed. Not just as a father, but as a man. She gave him a sad smile. Let's focus on Miles for now. Adrian nodded, respecting her decision. As they walked back to the car, he reflected on just how much his life had transformed. The man who once thrived on boardroom deals and global acquisitions now spent his mornings talking about telescope optics and robotics with an 8-year-old. The executive who had once measured his worth in market cap and shareholder votes now found his greatest value in laughter, bedtime stories, and small arms thrown around his neck. Back in his home office, he found Lydia already adjusting his daily schedule. The company's stock is up 2% following the announcement of the new CEO, she reported. Also, 3 conferences have reached out to request you speak about your transition, from corporate leadership to family life. Decline them, Adrian said, settling into his desk chair. My only priority now is getting ready for a very important camping trip. Lydia smiled, making a note on her tablet. Should I look into the best-rated camping gear? Please. And one more thing, Adrian added, turning serious. Of course, sir. Find the best local astronomy expert. I want to learn everything about the constellations before the weekend. As Lydia left, Adrian glanced at the drawing pinned beside his desk, one of Miles's creations. A sketch of a robot explorer, annotated in the margins with technical notes and mission objectives. His son was brilliant, inquisitive, full of wonder and dreams. For the first time in his life, Adrian understood that his own dream had never been about power or prestige. It was about connection. Throughout the week, Adrian immersed himself in a private crash course in astronomy. Dr. Elena Blackwood, a top astrophysicist from the Stanford Astronomy Department, spent hours walking him through constellations, planetary rotations, and star patterns. "Mr. Calloway," she remarked at one point, watching him trace star paths on a map, "it's rare to see someone dive so deeply into this, so quickly." "My son," Adrian replied, his tone full of quiet conviction. "He knows every constellation, every moon. I want to understand his world." On Friday afternoon, Adrian stood beside his new SUV, far more practical for family getaways than the flashy convertible he used to drive, carefully arranging tents, sleeping bags, and telescope equipment. Adrian received an unexpected message from Savannah. "I saw your interview on Bloomberg. You look happy. I hope you found what you were looking for." He stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "I found something I didn't even know I was searching for. I hope you find your happiness too." At exactly 4 p.m., Elise and Miles arrived as planned. Miles practically jumped out of the car, bursting with excitement, carrying his favorite telescope and a backpack stuffed with astronomy books. "Dad, you won't believe it. There's going to be a meteor shower this weekend." "The Perseids," Adrian said, proud of the knowledge he'd recently acquired. "It happens every year between July and August, when Earth passes through debris left by the Swift-Tuttle comet." Both Elise and Miles turned to him in surprise. "How do you know that?" Miles asked, clearly impressed. "Let's just say your dad's been doing some homework," Elise replied with a smile tugging at her lips. The drive to the campsite, a remote region in the New Hampshire Highlands known for its exceptionally dark skies, was filled with energetic chatter. They talked about stars, robotics, school antics, and even pulled over a few times to capture the breathtaking scenery. "Did you know," Miles explained while helping pitch the tent, "this is one of the best stargazing spots on the entire East Coast? The light pollution index is almost 0. "Really?" Adrian feigned surprise, casting a knowing wink at Elise. He'd spent hours researching the perfect location. That night, the three of them sat around a modest campfire, roasting marshmallows and exchanging stories. Miles, filled with curiosity, asked how his parents had met. "Your mom was the standout in Stanford's journalism program," Adrian began, his tone soft with nostalgia. "The first time I saw her, she was buried in books on ethics and investigative reporting." "And your dad," Elise added, grinning, "was this overconfident business student who thought he could dominate the world." "And I did," Adrian said, smiling wryly. "I just didn't realize I was chasing the wrong things." The silence that followed was gentle, filled only by the crackling fire and the distant hum of night insects. Miles, fully immersed in adjusting his telescope, seemed unaware of the quiet exchange happening behind him. "Dad, come check this out," he called excitedly. "You can see Saturn's rings super clearly." Adrian stood, grateful for the redirection. As he leaned over the telescope, Elise stepped beside him. The scent of pine mixed with the familiar perfume she always wore. "You really have changed," she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. "I had to," Adrian replied, his voice low. He replied in the same soft tone, "For him, for you, for me." The night continued with Miles eagerly pointing out constellations, Adrian impressing him with newly acquired facts, and Elise capturing the moments with her professional camera. When the meteor shower began, the three of them laid out on a blanket, eyes wide with wonder. "Make a wish," Miles shouted each time a shooting star streaked across the sky. Adrian didn't need to. Everything he had ever wanted was right there, under the dark New Hampshire sky. His brilliant, curious son, the woman he had never truly stopped loving, and a calm he had never found, not even in the boardrooms of billion-dollar ventures. By autumn, Cambridge had turned into a living canvas of reds and golds. The campus of Stanford glowed beneath the fallen leaves, and Adrian walked its paths, not as a student nor as a high-profile donor, but simply as the father of one of the youngest mentees in the university's elite robotics initiative. "Mr. Calloway," Dr. Martinez greeted him at the lab entrance. "Miles is finishing up his project. He's been very secretive, wants it to be a surprise." Today was the day of the Stanford Innovation Fair, a renowned event that rarely featured participants so young. But Miles had been the exception. His intelligence, work ethic, and passion for learning had earned him a rare invitation to present. "Dad, Mom," Miles called, running over in a lab coat a bit too snug on his quickly growing frame. Over the past few months he had grown taller, and his face now carried an unmistakable blend of Adrian and Elise's features. Elise arrived moments later, camera in hand. She smiled at their son's enthusiasm. "I've been waiting weeks to see this famous surprise of yours." Miles led them to a reserved booth where a tall object stood hidden beneath a cloth. With a proud, theatrical sweep, he unveiled it. Both Adrian and Elise stood in stunned silence. It was a sophisticated robotic system, anchored around an automated telescope. Several screens displayed real-time data, star positions, atmospheric readings, and celestial trajectories. "It's an automated astronomical observation unit," Miles explained, his eyes shining. "It combines robotics and astronomy. The telescope compensates for Earth's rotation and tracks planets, stars, and meteor showers, even in less than perfect weather. I coded the entire tracking software myself." Adrian felt something shift in his chest, a pride so immense it made his eyes sting. Elise reached over and gently squeezed his hand. "He's brilliant," she whispered. "He's ours," Adrian replied, voice thick with emotion. Miles hadn't just combined his two greatest interests, astronomy and robotics. He had built something truly groundbreaking. "There's something else," Dr. Martinez said, stepping forward. "Miles, I think it's time you shared the other news." The boy practically vibrated with excitement. "Stanford wants to file a provisional patent for my project, and they've invited me to join a special mentorship program to keep working on it." Elise immediately wrapped her arms around her son, tears of pride welling in her eyes. "Sweetheart, that's amazing!" Adrian stood silently, letting the moment sink in. His son, just 9 years old, had done what most researchers spent decades dreaming about. But it wasn't just the achievement that moved him. It was Miles's determination, his joy, his heart. "There's one more thing," Miles added, his tone suddenly more serious. He led them closer to the base of the robotic system, where a small plaque had been affixed. It read, "For my dad, who taught me it's never too late to do the right thing, and my mom, who never stopped believing in me. With love, Miles Hartman Calloway." The use of the combined name Hartman Calloway, which Miles had started using recently, didn't go unnoticed. "Miles," Adrian began, his voice rough with emotion. But he was interrupted by a stir near the lab's entrance. Savannah Danforth, poised as ever in a tailored Chanel pantsuit, stepped gracefully into the room. The sudden hush among attendees gave way to polite murmurs, but her smile was warm as she approached. "I came to see the science fair," she said, pausing at a respectful distance. "The Danforth Foundation is one of the event's longtime sponsors." Her gaze shifted to Miles. "You must be the young innovator everyone's been talking about." Miles stepped forward confidently. "Miles Hartman Calloway. Nice to meet you, Miss Danforth." Savannah's expression softened. "The pleasure's mine, Miles. Your project is extraordinary." She turned to Elise and Adrian. "You both must be incredibly proud." "We are," Elise said, instinctively reaching for Adrian's hand. The small gesture wasn't lost on Savannah. She nodded thoughtfully. "I just wanted to congratulate you," she added, then hesitated briefly, "and to let you know that the Danforth Foundation would like to offer a research grant for the continued development of this project." Miles's eyes widened. "Really?" "Absolutely," Savannah said with a gentle smile. "Talent like yours should always be encouraged, no matter the circumstances." With that, she excused herself, walking away more quietly than she had entered, leaving behind a lighter air. "Well," Adrian said, watching her go, "was unexpected." "She showed a lot of grace," Elise murmured. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in a flurry. Presentations, interviews with regional reporters, and impromptu conversations with fascinated professors. Miles, equal parts passionate and poised, explained his invention with the clarity of a scientist and the wonder of a child. When the fair finally wrapped up, the three of them decided to celebrate at a quaint Italian bistro, the same one Adrian and Elise had often visited during their college years. "They still serve that wild mushroom ravioli you loved?" Adrian remarked as they slid into a cozy booth tucked in the corner. "You remember that?" Elise asked, surprised. "I remember everything," he replied simply. Miles, completely absorbed in the kids' menu, seemed unaware of the quiet exchange between his parents. Can I get pepperoni pizza? Of course, sweetheart, Elise smiled. Today's your day. While they waited for the food, Miles launched into an excited retelling of the professors he'd met, the questions they'd asked, and his ideas for refining his project. Adrian and Elise exchanged soft glances, their hands occasionally brushing across the table. There was an ease, a familiarity between them that neither had dared hope would return. You know, Miles said suddenly in a tone far more serious than before, I have one more surprise. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to them. Inside was a simple drawing, 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, standing in front of a modest house. It's the house we saw in Palo Alto last week, he explained, the one with the huge backyard where we could build a telescope dome. He hesitated before adding, I figured, now that you two are dating again. Adrian and Elise looked at each other, startled. They had been cautious. Dinners only after Miles was asleep, no overt gestures around him. How did you? Elise began. Miles rolled his eyes in a way only a nearly 10-year-old could. Mom, you've been wearing your fancy perfume way more lately. And Dad? You grin at your phone every time she texts you. He shrugged. I'm not a little kid anymore. Adrian chuckled. His son was far more observant than he'd given him credit for. And would you? Approve. Duh, Miles declared. Why do you think I've been accidentally leaving you two alone after dinner, or always asking both of you to come with me to stuff? Elise burst into laughter, her hands covering her face, tears forming in her eyes. Oh my God, we've been outsmarted by a 9-year-old. 9 3/4, Miles corrected, then added with mock seriousness. And it wasn't manipulation, it was strategic facilitation. Adrian raised an eyebrow, grinning. Been reading my business books? Actually, Miles grinned. Grandma Lillian told me to do it. She said you two are too stubborn to see what's right in front of you. Elise's mother, who had surprisingly warmed up to Adrian over the last few months, had clearly been playing quiet matchmaker behind the scenes. Miles, Elise began gently, adult relationships are complicated. They shouldn't be, he interrupted. You love each other. You always have. Why make it complicated? Before either of them could respond, their meals arrived. Pepperoni pizza for Miles, wild mushroom ravioli for Elise, and seafood linguine for Adrian. The room filled briefly with only the soft clatter of cutlery and the comforting murmur of conversation. The house, Adrian said after a long pause, referencing the drawing Miles had given them earlier. The one you sketched? I already made an offer on it. Elise's fork froze midair. You what? She asked softly. It was right after the camping trip, Adrian explained, swirling his wine. I realized I didn't want penthouses or luxury towers anymore. I wanted a real home, a yard where Miles can run around, space for a telescope for his inventions, and enough bedrooms for a family to grow. Miles nearly bounced out of his chair. Does that mean we're all going to live together? Slow down, champ, Adrian chuckled. First, your mom needs to decide if she's open to that. Elise fidgeted with the napkin in her lap, her fingers trembling just slightly. Adrian, that's a really big step. I know, he said softly. And I'm not asking you to rush. The house would be mine, for now. A space where Miles has his room when he's with me. A place where we can create something new, if and when the time is right. There's even an apple tree in the backyard, Miles chimed in eagerly. Like the one in Grandma Lillian's garden, remember, Mom? Elise smiled. That apple tree had been her haven during the hardest days of her pregnancy, when everything had felt uncertain. And there's an office space, too, Adrian added, his voice careful. One that looks out on the garden. I thought you could write there. You two planned this, she said, blinking through a sudden blur of tears. Didn't you? Actually, Miles beamed. Dad thought of it. I just helped pick out which room would be my lab. Just then, the waiter returned with dessert, a small tiramisu, her favorite from their college days. But this one was different. On top, dusted in cocoa, were the words written in chocolate, "Marry me." Elise gasped softly, eyes already brimming. Adrian stood, knelt down beside her, and pulled a velvet box from his pocket. 15 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life, choosing ambition over love. 8 years ago, fate gave me another chance, and I almost lost it again. But now... He opened the box to reveal a delicate sapphire ring, her favorite, not the expected flashy diamond. I know exactly what I want, Adrian said softly. want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to watch our son grow up in a house full of laughter and love. I want to build an observatory in the yard and spend nights stargazing with both of you. I want." "Yes," Elise interrupted, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. "I wasn't finished with my speech," Adrian teased, his own eyes wet. "You don't need to be," she smiled, pulling him into a kiss. Applause erupted throughout the restaurant. Miles jumped up from his chair and hugged his parents tightly. "Finally," he beamed. Suddenly, flashes lit up through the restaurant's windows. Paparazzi, having trailed them from the science fair, were now capturing the moment. "Oh no," Elise murmured, shrinking slightly under the attention. "Hey," Adrian said gently, cupping her face in his hands. "Don't worry about them. Tonight is ours. Our famous family, Collins Calloway," Miles shouted joyfully, causing laughter all around. That evening, after dropping Miles off at Elise's parents' home, who, as it turned out, had already known about Adrian's proposal plan, Adrian and Elise walked hand in hand through the MIT campus, retracing their old steps. "That library," Elise pointed, "where you used to fake studying just to catch glimpses of me. And that bench," Adrian nodded, "where you first told me you were in love with me. And that lab," Elise smiled, "where we had our first kiss." Adrian stopped walking and turned to her. "You know what else happened on this campus?" "What?" she asked. "It's where, a few months ago, I promised myself I'd get it right this time, that I'd become the man you and Miles deserve." Elise rested her head against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. "You already are, Adrian. You've changed so much." "For you," he whispered, "and for Miles, and I'll keep growing and evolving, because now I know what truly matters." Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Miles, filled with photos from the proposal, already published online. The final photo showed all three of them embracing, under the headline, "Former Callaway Corp CEO finds true wealth in reclaimed family." Adrian chuckled. Well, at least this time they got the headline right. By spring, the Cambridge house had transformed. The once modest backyard now resembled something out of a storybook. The apple tree, blooming with white blossoms, stood tall at the center of it all, its branches adorned with paper lanterns, ready to glow as dusk fell. Miles, now freshly 10 years old, tugged slightly at the collar of his miniature tuxedo. On his 10th turn as a ring-bearer, Miles took his role more seriously than ever. "Dad," he called, stepping into the office where Adrian was adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "Grandma Lillian says Mom's almost ready." "Oh, and the people from the observatory just arrived." The observatory, Adrian's early wedding gift to their family, had been completed just the week before. Tucked into the back of the garden, it was a sleek, understated structure housing one of the finest telescopes available. And of course, it now featured Miles's upgraded, automated astronomical observation system, version 2.0. "How does she look?" Adrian asked, fumbling slightly with his bow tie. "Beautiful," Miles replied with a grin. "And nervous, just like you." Adrian chuckled. His son always had an uncanny sense for reading people. "Come give me a hand with this." Miles stepped closer, confidently adjusting the crooked tie with the ease of someone who had watched plenty of YouTube tutorials. "There," he said. "Now you look like a real groom, not a CEO pretending to be one." "Hey, I thought I'd gotten better at dressing like a human." "You have," Miles said, smirking. "But you're still working on looking less boardroom." Upstairs, Elise stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom. Her gown, a soft blend of lace and silk, was understated, elegant, and utterly her. Nothing like the extravagant dress she once almost wore for a different wedding with a different man. This one reflected exactly who she was and who she had become. "Sweetheart," Lillian said as she entered, eyes moist with emotion. "It's time." "Mom," Elise whispered, taking her hands. "Thank you for helping me when I found out I was pregnant, for raising Miles with me, for believing that everything would somehow work out." Lillian smiled, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "I always knew Adrian would come back." "How did you know?" "Because he looked at you the same way your father still looks at me, after 40 years. A gentle knock broke the moment. Rachel, now more of a family friend than just an assistant, stepped in. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a warm smile, "but someone wants to see the bride." To Elise's surprise, Karen Danworth entered, graceful in a navy blue gown. "Karen?" Elise said, taken aback. "I didn't expect." "I know," Karen replied, offering a genuine smile. "But I couldn't stay away. Not today. Not after everything." She held out a small box. "It's a gift for Miles," Karen said as she offered a small box. Inside, Elise found a golden key. "It's symbolic," Karen explained. "The Danworth Foundation is establishing an astrophysics research lab at MIT. We'd like Miles to be our first junior resident researcher." Elise's eyes brimmed with tears. "Karen?" "This is the least I can do," Karen said, her voice quiet but sure. "That boy, he's remarkable. He reminded me that some things are bigger than resentment." The two women embraced. Years of silent tension melted in that quiet, graceful moment. Outside, 50 close friends and family members took their seats on the lawn, white chairs carefully arranged in neat rows beneath blooming apple trees. Dr. Martinez chatted animatedly with Bernard about patent rights for underage inventors. Rachel, now a permanent part of the family, coordinated final catering details, while Miles darted among the guests, proudly filling his self-appointed role as junior host. When the music started, all eyes turned toward Elise, walking slowly down the garden path on her father's arm. Adrian stood waiting beneath the apple tree, his breath catching at the sight of her. Miles stood proudly beside him, holding the velvet pillow with the rings, embroidered in golden thread with constellations of his own design. The officiant, a retired MIT professor who had taught both Adrian and Elise, opened the ceremony with a heartfelt reflection on second chances and cosmic timing. But it was the vows that brought tears to every eye. Adrian took Elise's hands, his voice steady, filled with emotion. "Elise, 15 years ago I was too blind to see what mattered most. I thought success was measured in stock tickers and skyscrapers. But every day since, I've learned that true wealth lives in love, in family, in moments shared." He glanced at Miles, then back at Elise. "You showed me what love means. And Miles, he showed me the man I want to be. I promise to spend the rest of my life being the man you both deserve, building a life full of laughter, love, and stargazing." Tears slipped down Elise's cheeks as she began her vows. "Adrian, you were my first love, my first heartbreak, and somehow my greatest hope. I thought I'd lost you for good. But life has a way of surprising us." She smiled through her tears. "I promise to cherish every moment, to laugh with you, grow with you, and build a home filled with love. For Miles, for us, for the family we've become." Miles, standing between them, whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Finally." Laughter rippled through the garden. Applause followed, swelling as Adrian and Elise sealed their vows with a kiss beneath the apple blossoms, marking the beginning of a life they had fought so long to find again. As the sun dipped below the horizon and paper lanterns flickered to life above the garden, Miles led his parents to the observatory for its first use as a family. The sleek dome opened, and the telescope, now fully integrated with Miles's upgraded observation system, tracked the constellations with quiet precision. Together, the three of them looked skyward, searching for Jupiter's moons and Saturn's rings. Under the vast, infinite sky, Adrian reached for Elise's hand. "Elise," he said softly, his voice trembling ever so slightly. 15 years ago I believed success meant power and wealth. I had to lose you, nearly lose you again, just to realize that real success isn't found in skyscrapers or boardrooms. It's found beside someone you can share the stars with at night. It's having a brilliant son who teaches me more than any business ever could. It's waking up each morning, knowing I'm part of something far greater than any empire I tried to build. A family." Elise wiped away a tear, then began her vows. "Adrian, when we first met, we were just two dreamers chasing different kinds of truth. Life pulled us in opposite directions, maybe because we needed to grow. I'm no longer just the idealistic journalism student, and you're no longer the executive driven only by ambition. We've become better versions of ourselves, shaped by time, mistakes, and second chances. And now we're ready to build something that lasts. Something real, together, with our amazing son." Miles, trying hard not to cry, wiped his eyes discreetly with the sleeve of his tuxedo. As the officiant declared them husband and wife, the setting sun painted the sky in pink and gold. The paper lanterns flickered to life, an automation designed by Miles, casting a magical glow across the garden. The reception carried on under those soft lights, every corner of the garden filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and joyful tears. When Miles stepped forward, the crowd hushed. When I was younger, he began, standing tall beside the observatory, I used to look at the stars and make 3 wishes every night. First, that my dad would find me. Second, that he and my mom would realize they still loved each other. And third, that we could be a real family. He paused, his smile pure. I guess the stars finally listened. Applause erupted, echoing through the yard as many dabbed their eyes. In one corner of the garden, Karen and Elise sat together, smiling as they discussed Miles's future in the research program. The years of distance melting away in their shared pride. Adrian stood nearby with Dr. Martinez, animatedly talking about expanding the observation system to other schools. Martha, Elise's mother, watched from a quiet corner, a contented smile on her face as she took in the scene. Her husband, Robert, approached with 2 champagne flutes. Remember when Elise told us she was pregnant? He asked, handing her a glass. You said everything happens for a reason, Martha replied softly, watching as Miles proudly explained his observatory to curious guests. That boy, she whispered, he's the bridge that brought 2 people back together, people who were never meant to be apart. Nearby, Bernard and Rachel chatted at a garden table, exchanging notes about the positive changes at the company since Adrian's departure. You know, Bernard said thoughtfully, when he first told me he was stepping down as CEO, I thought Adrian had lost his mind. But now... He trailed off, watching Adrian spin Elise gently on the dance floor, both laughing freely beneath a sky painted in warm lantern light. Rachel smiled beside him. He finally realized some things in life aren't meant to be measured in quarterly earnings. As the night deepened, Miles appeared in front of the gathered guests with Dr. Martinez by his side. We have one more surprise, he announced with excitement. The garden lights dimmed slightly, and above them a projection lit up the sky, an augmented reality star map of the Milky Way. The crowd gasped. This, Miles explained, pointing upward, is the constellation Cassiopeia. My parents met under it. It's a queen punished for her vanity, but to me, it represents something else. It shows how sometimes the universe needs time to get the stars in the right place. Adrian and Elise locked eyes, deeply moved by their son's insight and the poetic truth in his words. When the guests began to leave, the newly formed family retreated to the observatory. Miles carefully calibrated his telescope and invited them to look. Jupiter's really bright tonight. You can see the 4 Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Adrian peered through the lens, then nodded, repeating, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Exactly, Miles beamed. They're like a small family, orbiting something bigger, just like us. Elise pulled him into a hug, smiling against his cheek. When did you get so wise? Probably when I realized I have the best parents in the world, Miles said with a grin. Even if it took you both a while to figure it out. Adrian chuckled, joining the hug. Sometimes it takes the brightest minds the longest to grasp the most obvious truths. Later, they lay on the lawn beneath the apple tree, the stars twinkling above, blending seamlessly with Miles's projection. It was peaceful, perfect. So, Miles broke the silence with a smirk. When are you going to tell me about the honeymoon? Elise and Adrian exchanged startled glances. How did you? Please. Miles cut in. You left the tickets to the Galapagos open on the computer, and there are 3 tickets, not 2. Elise laughed. We wanted to surprise you. You did, Miles replied. But I've been asking to visit the Galapagos ever since I learned about Darwin. Adrian ruffled his son's hair. You're impossible to surprise. Not entirely, Miles said, voice softening. Today surprised me. This was the best day of my life. Ours too, Elise whispered, her hand finding Adrian's. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and for once, none of them needed to make a wish. Everything they dreamed of was already here, under the stars on a perfect night in Cambridge. 8 years later, the MIT auditorium roared with applause. At only 18 years old, Miles Collins Calloway stood poised to accept 3 degrees, robotics, engineering, and astrophysics, making him the youngest graduate in the university's history. Offers from NASA and the European Southern Observatory awaited him, both competing for his talents on groundbreaking projects. In the front row, Adrian and Elise watched with quiet pride as their son stepped onto the stage to deliver his commencement speech. Beside them, 2 7-year-old girls, Kristen and Kimberly, wore matching t-shirts that read, Our big brother is a space genius. When I was 10, Miles began, adjusting his mortarboard. I gave my first presentation in this very auditorium. It was a project about astronomy and robotics, born from a curiosity about the unknown. But what I didn't know then was that my greatest discovery wouldn't be about stars or planets. It would be about love and family. Adrian gently squeezed Elise's hand. The memory of that long-ago science fair fresh in both their minds. The twins, wiggling in their seats, whispered to each other about how cool and space-important their brother looked up on stage. My automated astronomical observation system, which started as a science fair experiment, Miles continued, is now used in observatories around the world. But to me, it was never just about science. It was about connection through our shared wonder of the cosmos. Just like the stars brought my family together. In the audience, Dr. Martinez beamed with pride. Karen Danworth, now a well-respected patron of the sciences, clapped gently. Bernard and Rachel, still close friends and key figures in their lives, were seated nearby, visibly moved. After the ceremony, the family gathered in the backyard observatory, now far more advanced but still filled with its original warmth and wonder. Kristen and Kimberly spun in their dresses, giggling as they pretended to be astronauts. "So," Adrian asked, "have you decided which offer to take?" Miles gave a playful smile, pulling an envelope from the pocket of his graduation gown. "Actually, I've got a third option." He waved the envelope slightly. "Remember our trip to the Galapagos right after your wedding?" "How could we forget?" Elise laughed. "That's where you fell in love with marine biology." Miles nodded. "Well, I just got approval to launch the world's first fully automated underwater observatory in the Galapagos. It's a project that merges oceanography with astronomy." Adrian stared at his son, awestruck. Elise reached for her husband's hand, her eyes misty. "But there's more," Miles added, his voice soft with emotion. "Guess who's funding it?" "The Danworth Foundation?" Elise guessed. "Better," Miles replied. "Callaway Enterprises. They want to launch a research division, and they want me to lead it." Adrian's breath caught. The company he had once founded was now evolving into something more visionary, more human. And it was his son, his legacy, who would carry it forward. Just then, Kristen tugged at Miles's sleeve. "Can we see the turtles again? And the dolphins?" Kimberly asked excitedly. Miles chuckled. "You two are officially my special assistants. You'll help document every discovery." The girls squealed in delight, already dreaming of sea adventures and science missions. That night, under the same stars that had once granted the wishes of a lonely 10-year-old boy, the Callaway family celebrated not just a graduation, but the start of a beautiful new chapter. They toasted to the future, to family, and to the boundless wonders still waiting to be uncovered. High above, the stars shimmered just a little brighter, having watched over a story of hope, healing, and rediscovery. A story they had always known was written in the stars. "Hey there, our wonderful friends. You're still here with us, right? If you've made it this far, something must have touched your heart in some way. And maybe now, just for a moment, we can look at this story, not with a lens of right or wrong, but simply as it is. A journey of loss, rediscovery, and healing." Adrian's story reminds us that the path to real fulfillment isn't paved with success, luxury, or recognition. It's paved with connection, with choosing love, even when it's uncomfortable, messy, or inconvenient. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Adrian didn't plan for fatherhood, nor did he expect to face the emotional reckoning of his past, but he chose to show up, to grow, to love. And that choice changed everything. Many of us are taught to chase titles, achievements, the next big milestone. But sometimes, what matters most is simply being there for the people who matter most. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius wrote. Adrian did just that. And maybe that's the lesson we're all meant to carry forward. So if you're still here, maybe it's time to pause, to reflect. Who are the people in your life that need your presence, not your perfection? Who have you become while chasing your version of success? And most importantly, what are you willing to do, starting today, to become the person you were always meant to be? If this story stirred something in you, give it a like, share it with someone who needs a little light, and subscribe for more content that speaks not just to the mind, but to the soul. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, And above all, stay open.